Good day. These are the thoughts that I'm sharing along the way we walk in the way of faith. I'm Reverend Bruce Hartley. I'm the pastor at Granger United Methodist Church in Medina, Ohio. And it's August 16th, 2020. We've been focusing on God's people living in a troubled world. And today I'm focusing on how we keep our balance. How we keep our balance in this time of trouble. Tripping and falling. It's so often the case that when we trip, or at least when I trip or stumble or fall, it happens in a crowd. There are people around, and for some reason people seem to be videoing, not just me, but videoing each other. And then they see something hilarious, or at times hilarious, like somebody tripping and falling or stumbling, and they decide to load it onto YouTube, where thousands or sometimes even millions of people view and laugh over and again at the poor guy or gal or person who tripped or fell. Tripping and falling can be funny. Tripping and falling can also result in serious injury and even death. I searched for some data. I found an article by Katie Hafner, which I've in the sermon notes if you want to read more. Miss Hafner writes in this article, the rate of deaths after falls is rising for people over 75, a new study shows. But falls are avoidable, she goes on to say, for seniors. And she offers some tips. She goes on to say, for seniors. And she offers some tips. And I'll not share all her tips, but I want to highlight a few. Not in any great detail, but you can read the article for yourself. So she offers 3 different tips. The first one is that if you want to avoid falling, now there's a doctor that she notes within the course of this article, a Dr. Lipsitz, and he emphasized the importance of incorporating exercise in our daily routine. He suggests, like 20 minutes a day, combining aerobic and weightlifting and some strengthening for the legs. It's a good idea. The other tip that she offers is to reaccessorize. And what she means by that is that you be careful about your glasses in part. Avoid bifocals or progressive misjudge. You can lose a sense of depth stepping off a curb or a step and lose that depth perception. Also, she makes a note about footwear, and so no more high heels if you're over 75, it appears to what she's saying. You can read more about it. Watch those slippers. Watch those slippers. Slippers make you slip, is stated in the article. And the third tip that I'm going to offer, at least in my verbal thoughts, in my sermon here this morning, is to eliminate tripping hazards. She says get rid of those small rugs lying around your home, eliminate extension cords that stretch across the floor, take a closer look at the height of thresholds between rooms. It just takes a fraction of an inch to make you trip. Use a night light at night. So you have access to the bathroom. You can read more. I will try to connect these dots as I share tips on how to stay upright and avoid tripping and stumbling and falling, not so much in a physical sense. You can Google any kind of articles for that or talk to your doctor, but rather in a spiritual sense. Try to connect these dots to how we can stay upright and avoid tripping, stumbling, and falling in a spiritual sense. So, thoughts along the way, continue the series, as I said at the beginning, God's people in a troubled world. And today, I offer guidance on keeping your balance. Keeping your balance. And thus the talk about falling and stumbling to make that connection in our daily lives. For wandering minds and eyes that may lead to a spiritual fall is highlighted throughout the Holy Scriptures, both the Old and the New Testaments. I remember one of those, and if you grew up in the church, you may remember also David peeked over a wall, and he saw a woman taking a bath, major league stumble, and it ultimately leads to murder. The Apostle Paul commented on a tripping trauma, though he had spiritual spills, not physical flops in mind, when he was writing to, if you think you are standing, watch out. Watch out that you do not fall. And then we can read in Hebrews 12:1, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. The focus for keeping your balance in this troubled world is found today in the second letter attributed to Peter. Now, the key verse for us today is verse 10 in 2 Peter chapter 1. He says, brothers and sisters, be all the more eager to confirm your call and election, for if you do this, you will never stumble. That's a pretty significant statement. Pretty significant statement. You will never stumble. He's talking about spiritually. Let's try to unpack that. Let's try to learn more what he has to say. And you can read in the sermon notes all today, at least in this recording. You could read for this. You don't need me to spoon feed you everything. So we're learning more. Recall the context of the world. Just a bit of context here. It's the first century. Jesus has been crucified and he's resurrected. There is an increasing belief that he will soon return. Now, looking back, we know that this has not happened yet. But persecution is raining down upon these new believers. And the author of 1st and 2nd Peter seeks to encourage and cultivate faithful Christian living so that they will not stumble or cause others who are watching their witness to in turn stumble. Of note, the author's main purpose is to assure his readers to live a faithful life in Christ, to be prepared for the coming of Christ by living a disciplined, godly, and peaceful life. This plea takes on some specifics. And in verse 5 we read, make every effort to support your faith. He then follows by noting 7 qualities. By noting 7 qualities, 7 ways in which we can support our faith. There is goodness, knowledge, self-control, endurance, godliness, mutual affection, and I could spend an entire message on each of these qualities, these characteristics of Christian living. But if you want some further insight, some definition as to what these mean, then go to the sermon notes, and I've made some notes there for you to follow up on. So in the face of troubled times, in a troubled world, the author calls the church for a demonstration of the Spirit of Christ through the way they live out their faith. The 7 characteristics, you can go back to that. This challenge, it's not new. In Colossians, he said, lead lives worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him, as you bear fruit in every good work and grow in the knowledge of God. Jesus himself, he was preaching in a time in his early ministry on the Sermon on the Mount. It's found in the Gospel of Matthew. You will know them by their fruits. That way, that is to say, the way you live your life, you will know them. You will know that they are my disciples. And so, in case I've distracted you with too many references, I want to repeat the key verse. I want to bring us back into the focus. Verse 10. Brothers and sisters, be all the more eager to confirm your call and election, for if you do this, you'll never stumble. The writer is concerned. In light of the troubled times he was living, he senses the church may be wavering in their faith in the face of the persecution and the rather sophisticated arguments coming at them. And that's not to question the intelligence of his audience, but rather the kind of convoluted arguments that were happening by others around them about the second coming of Jesus. His concern leads him, therefore, to encourage. To encourage, we do not stumble when we look where we are going. So watch where you're going. You see, we're only trip when we get distracted by other things. When we keep our eyes fixed on Christ, when we keep our eyes fixed on His will, God's purpose for our lives, we need not fear falling. We need not fear going astray. Or, if we do by chance stumble, we believe Christ is there to help us up, to point us on the way God, to point us on the way God has put before us. So I lift these words before you today, that God's people living in these troubled times may also be encouraged as we strive to remain in a troubled world. This is a time to eliminate distractions and to better focus our spiritual attention. Now, for Christians, the main thing is to live in Jesus Christ, rooted and built up in Him and established in the faith. If we keep Jesus as the head of our body, we will avoid the many distractions that can pull us away from living in Him and pursuing His ministry and mission. Make a more conscientious effort to avoid distractions. And it's why Granger United Methodist Church has offered 2 different small groups focusing on the importance of tending and resetting our soul, Identifying what drains our souls, what distracts us from nurturing our souls is key to us maintaining our focus. So, in leading one of those studies, I was introduced to a faithful author, a faithful man, servant of God. His name is Dallas Willard. And I hold tight to a statement he made that was then quoted in John Ortberg's book, Soul Keeping. I've noted that in the sermon notes. Dallas Willard said, and John Ortberg wrote, "Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry." Let that sink in. Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. I don't know about you, but when I get rushed, when I'm hurried, I get distracted, and I do not make the healthiest choices. When I rush, I can trip, I can stumble, I can fall, both physically and spiritually. Do you need me to tell you, to remind you that our world is an anxious place these days? This world is troubled. Many seek answers, seek clarity, seek direction, and frankly, we are seeking doing so in not so healthy or wise for these answers. I find myself facing challenges I never thought I would face, both personally and pastorally. When I identify my mind and spirit are facing a time of paralysis and the jabs lobbed by politicians in our country, and I just want to pull my hair out while watching the news, I find that I need to stop. Sometimes I need to take a news Sabbath, a technology Sabbath, and I need to focus on the one who stabilizes me, who keeps me from stumbling. That is Jesus Christ. Then there are times I need to take a deep breath or two or three. And in that time, I need to pray for wisdom and I need to pray for grace. I need to cut myself some slack. And I need to act on what I've learned. And what I've learned is that when I trust in God, God will act. I need to not only say those words, I need to believe that God is faithful to act. When I commit my way to the Lord and trust Him, He will act. The psalmist wrote that many, many years ago. So more times than I'm walking in circles during troubled times, especially these troubled times. I thought you might too, which is why I'm offering thoughts about keeping your balance. The Bible has stories that show us how to walk through life. Some involve the people of Israel. Talk about some troubled times. They sometimes got lost and they sometimes ran into dead ends. They sometimes grumbled among themselves. Oh, and then there's the stories of the early church that reveal all kinds of distractions that they faced. I believe we can learn from these stories and thereby less likely to trip, stumble, and fall. That is, in a spiritual manner. The Apostle Paul and others, they didn't want God's people to make the mistakes that were made by the early church. They wanted people to gain strength and insight and encouragement from the struggles and the troubles of the past life and bring them into the future, whatever the troubles we're facing. Was Paul anticipating a pandemic? No. God does not want us to get lost, to trip or fall and stumble. God promises to walk with everyone who trusts in the divine. I believe I will endure these troubled times. I believe we will endure these troubled times. I will, and you will. I will, and you will. I wish I could offer with confidence when these troubled times will be less troubling, when they will end. But I can't. But until these troubled, refocus on living faithfully as a citizen of God's kingdom. As I've previously read, do this and you'll have your life on a firm footing. The streets paved and the way wide open into the eternal kingdom of your Master and Savior, Jesus Christ. I hope some of these help. I hope this time of refocus is something that attracts you into a closer relationship with the one who gave his life for you. I've included some questions in the sermon notes. I look forward to engaging with you. I hope that you'll engage and answer some of those questions. We will benefit from learning from each other, dear friends. We will benefit. Each of us will benefit from learning from each other as we lean on our Master Jesus Christ. I do believe we are in this together with God and with the people. God bless your faithfulness as we seek to survive and thrive through this troubled time and keep